Our Animal Welfare Summit will start. Before we start the afternoon session, we have played the podcast as the opening video. So, distinguished guests and dear friends, I am I'm the executive director of Good Food Fund CBCGDF, Melinda Hobing, and welcome to our Healthy Sustainable Food Animal Fair Subforum. Welcome to join us. The UN will host the first Food System Summit in 2 weeks on the 23rd of September, and the goal is to establish a equal and sustainable food system. And the summit calls our attention to establish an inclusive and sustainable food system and to overcome the multiple challenges in the food system. With this as the context in this afternoon, we would like to talk about how to establish a healthy diet and how to promote animal welfare. And we have three parts in this subforum. And first, I want to talk about the impact of consumption of animal-derived products on human health, animals, and the environment. And in the second part, we have three professors to share with us their views of animal welfare from the culture of China and the practices in the everyday life. And we also have the experts from home and abroad to share their views about how to get consumers pay attention to animal welfare, reduce meat consumption, and buy animal welfare products. And that will be a round table discussion. And before we start, please allow me to introduce our Good Food Fund. The Good Food Fund is under the CBCGDF. CBCGDF is one of the first public institutions dedicated to the national welfare, and since 2017, we have the Good Food Fund established, and we are dedicated for the establishment of a healthy and sustainable food system, and we are the first fund to pay attention to the transformation. Since 2017, we have a series of pioneering projects so that we can promote the plant-forward animal welfare, healthy diet, and improve the awareness. And we have a organized series of projects. And our vision is a one world, one health. And our mission is to promote good food for healthy people, healthy animals, and a healthy planet. We have a public engagement, research and education, business engagement, and public policies. These are the four fields of work for our fund. In 2019, in April, we have proposed the Good Food Pledge. That is to promote the consumption of healthy and sustainable foods. There are 8 principles under the Good Food Pledge, and it's a framework for our work. And the way of working is highly aligned to the SDGs of the UN. The first is plant forward, second is animal welfare, healthy diet, and reduce waste. Plant forward means in our diet on our plate, the plant-based dishes account for the majority of the food, and the animal-derived food shall be from the farms really value animal welfare. And the other 4 principles are local, seasonal, circular economy, preserve biodiversity, and food education. And we encourage the individuals and organizations to sign and join the pledge on our website. Why do we have this Good Food Pledge? Let's have a look at the impact of consumption of animal-derived products on human health, animals, and the environment. First, let's have a look at the impact on the farmed animals. Before I share my views, I would like to introduce the typology of animals. By the nature of the animals, and they can be divided into 6 types. There are farmed animals. These are the animals for the consumption and the usage of the human beings. And there are lab animals, companion animals, working animals, performing animals, and wild animals. Within the 6 types of animals, the general public pay high attention to companion animals, and the second is the wild animals. The largest proportion is farm animals, but the general public really have a limited attention to the farm animals. One possible reason is that they are only like the food or take furs from the animals. We do not pay much attention to the welfare of the farmed animals, but OIE has reinforced the importance of the farmed animals and the farm animal welfare, and there are the definition of animal welfare. And from this definition, we get to know that the animal welfare is to satisfy the physical and the mental state of an animal in relation to the conditions in which it lives and dies. And we need to take good care of the animals, and we are against any forms of animal abuse. So that's about animal welfare. But why we need to care about animal welfare? If you have a pet, you will understand and you will agree that animals are sentimental beings, and they have feelings. They are like human beings. They can feel pain, distress, hope, and happiness. And the same applies to the farmed animals. And the farm animals grow in the natural environment in the past, and they have companions, and they look for food. They live and grow in the natural environment, and they have different natural behaviors, like chicken live and nesting in the trees, and the pigs need to run away from the predators, etc. As we have increased the consumption of animal products. We have large industrialized, commercialized factory farms. And with these promotions, the general public has a higher and higher demand of animal products. And these naturally breeded and farmed animals cannot satisfy the need. So this kind of intensive farming becomes the mainstream. But intensive farming only pursue high efficiency, and how is the living standards or living conditions of the animals. We can refer to the photos. For example, they have a refined behaviors, like the pigs are refined to very small areas. The pigs can only stand up or lie down, and they cannot communicate with the other pigs, and the place is very small and the environment is really difficult. And on the right side, we have the broiler chicken, and they are in the cage. Every day what they see is the cage. They do not get to anywhere else, and they spend their whole life in such an environment. And we have an increasing demand of meat. So the producers do not respect the natural law of animal growth. And there's the genetic selection. On the left side, we have the photo showing the growth rate of the broiler chicken. From 1957 to 2005, the growth rate rose by 400%, and the FCR increases by 50%. So the broiler chicken is actually harvested within 40 days. And EFSA has pointed out this kind of a selection for rapid post-weaning will cause leg and food diseases, and SIs and sudden death. In order to reduce the cost, the intensive farming will have a high intensity of livestock farming, and there's a high level of stress among the animals, and they have a low immunity, so a lot of antibiotics have been used. In the world, more than 60% of the antibiotics are taken by the farm animals, and this kind of overuse of antibiotics cannot prevent the disease among the animals, and this causes the zoonotic disease outbreak. This is a huge risk for the human beings as well. And the overuse of antibiotics also cause the drug resistance. So the effectiveness of antibiotics decreases as well. And there's a data showing that by 2050, every year, the death caused by the supervirus and bacteria will be over 10 million. And this is because of drug resistance due to the overuse of antibiotics. This is a huge challenge for the human beings. And it's the good news is that we have the laws and regulations against the overuse of antibiotics in China. And we strongly feel that the health and the welfare of the animals are deeply related to the health of mankind. And next, let's have a look at the impact of consumption of the animal products on human health. And this chart is from the China Annual Book of Statistics. And in these statistics, axis marks the number of years, and the y-axis marks the meat consumption per capita per gram. And the meat consumption are like the pork, mutton, beef, and poultry. And we have the trend of meat consumption in China from 1990 to 2019. From the chart, you can see the two horizontal lines are the limit of meat consumption from the China dietary guidelines, and the minimum is 40 grams per day, and the upper limit, maximum limit, is 75 grams a day. So we can see the meat consumption per capita in the urban area is higher than the rural area, and the urban consumption is above the upper limit. And by the year before 2000, and for the rural areas, in 10 years, that is about in 2010, the meat consumption is above the upper limit. And this yearbook only has a calculation of the at-home dining, and the meat consumption in the restaurant outside of the home is not included. And it's understandable that when we go out for dining, we tend to consume more meat than dining at home. So the fact is that the meat consumption per capita in China will be much higher than what is shown here. And let's have a look at this table. This table is the meat consumption from the China Statistical Yearbook, and compared with the planet, the Eat Lancet report, Planet Health, Dietary Structure, and also the CDG 2017. And the recommendation is 0 to 86 gram, that is from LPH, and the CDG 2016 recommendation is about 75 gram. According to the Statistical Yearbook, the meat consumption is 104, so it's higher than either Eat Lancet or the CDG recommendations. And from this table, we can see the grains and the meat consumption are much higher than recommendation. Vegetables, fresh foods, comparing with the recommendation is not enough. And this is the impact on our health on the table.
We can tell from the figures and the facts. It's from Bill Melinda Foundation funded. It's a very important IHME. And also we saw in 2019, major potential causes of health and disability, and including the figures in 2019 and to make the comparison to 2019, the change on the influencing factors in 2019, it's taken into account 214 death causes and from 204 countries regions different factors. After the analysis, you can see that in terms of the result we have, it ranked number 4, right? But by 2019, it becomes number 3 out of the top 10 parts we have listed. The hypertension, and also have listed high BMI, high blood sugar, yeah. And also here we have listed the other risks from the compositions, from the food, from the vegetarian, whole grain, and the nuts. It is under consumed. The red meat are over consumed. And also from the Lancet, they published a similar result in terms of the outcomes. Findings are really very similar. So we can really prevent something from happening. The obesity and high blood pressure, and it increased so quickly. Yeah, and also especially while talking about the high LDL, they accounts for like 20%. So all of these disease caused by the poor habit. So for example, hypertension lead to 11 million deaths. High blood pressure lead out to 65 million people's death. High LDL cost for also more than 40 million. Totally more than 100 million people were impacted. And for overconsumption of this red meat has posed a big threat. And starting from 2020, COVID-19 has given us a very red flag that the selection of healthy diet is very relevant to public health. The selection of a wrong choice will pose threat not only to your health, but it may trigger a public health crisis across the globe. Next is about to learn about its impact on environment. The first is about land. Half of the Earth's land is used for agriculture. 3/4 is used for animal and forage farming. And also when it comes to farming has resulted in like 70 to 80% deforestation across the world. And when it comes to the biodiversity, and starting from this year, we learned also this is the global food system greatly contributes to the loss of biodiversity. So the global extinction rates are several orders of magnitude faster than the figures we have in the past 10 million years. The major cause of the habitat losses are the past 50 years. The conversion of natural ecosystem for cropping and farming and intensive agriculture causes soil degradation and a reduction on fertility, while resource-intensive and high-energy food consumption increases globally. And also, that has really led to a big impact. And this is also led to a big impact we have. And also, let's take a look at its impact on the climate change. This is from one of the top the journal on GHG footprint. It has shown us that different food has impact. The x-axis, horizontal axis, has shown us especially different food, and the y-axis is the emission. And also, this is also the plant foods, dairy, eggs, and aquatic animals. And we have territorial meat. Yeah, the very left side are the plant foods. And we can also see that animal-based food compared to that of plant counterparts, CO2 emission increased a lot. And also, we're talking about the IPCC has made a similar result. And we can see that, well, especially if globally speaking, everyone can follow its guidelines as a model to carry out their daily routines to have has less sources of meat. And also, we are also talking about this is more about to reduce over 30% of the emission. And also when it comes to the GHG emission and also CO2 neutrality, and if you can select healthy dietary habit, it will help to reduce the GHG emission.
刚才一插进来，我这个整个分享屏幕就断掉了。那么今年的话呢，我们就是我们也在
This year, I'm talking about farm animal welfare best practice in China. This is an research article we have made. It's about from a historical and a cultural perspective. And for animal welfare, it starts from the Western of the world, but we really also hope that from our own culture, can we also discuss about their animal values and dietary habits to promote a sustainable dietary habit. And we are about to publish it recently, and we'll also share with you about that later. And we are also very honored that we invite three really professors to share with us about the local animal and dietary habits, food and animal. We are really talking about heaven and earth as one, and it is a very early topic. In China, it was touched upon from our ancestors, and we do have a due respect for the sky and heaven and earth. And we are very glad to invite Professor Jiang Jingguang to share with us about the Confucian, from Confucian perspective. Please stay tuned with the animal ethics who have organized the students and who have been working in Tsinghua University and about this topic of animal ethics. The floor is yours. Thanks for the organizer. Okay, I think you can hear me. And personally, I'm not an expert. I'm not researching the confusion by myself. I didn't know a lot about that. But I want to contribute my thoughts on this topic. So while we were talking about the Confucianism, it remains one of the most important impactor on food, on animal, especially for Chinese, we are deeply impacted. Okay, so we are learning about that. Before we kick off the details, talk about details, it is necessary to introduce from the basic thoughts to benchmark the Western societies. The background is to learn about the three realms or levels for animal protection. The first, regard animal as the resources, part of the resources of the environment to protect the wild animal for the sake of humanity to use the animals in a sustainable manner. So you can eat animals, but not for rare or wild animals. This is very important. This is what we are doing here also in China. This is our leading thoughts. And it has already been accepted for a long time. But this is still not enough. Not enough yet. Many people are also protecting companion animals. Why? They are not a wild animal. Why do you still need protect the companion animals? So we'd like to take in a deep dive to treat animals as alive, which have the sensible abilities, like the dogs, like the cats, the companion animal, experiment animal. They can feel pains. They have sentiment. They have even family, and we should protect them. And we believe we should not bring like the pain for them. This is more about animal welfare, and for the animal welfare, which means from the ethics perspective, you can even eat them, you can make experiments for them, but we will try best to reduce, especially the pains of the animals. So it expand towards the companion animals, the farm animals, what we are talking about today, and the pig, the cow, or also the chicken, etc. The purpose is that compared to the resources conservations, a little bit different. It's not for our own. The ethics expanded towards animals itself. It's a quite big improvement. It's not human-centric, but still we are not having a playing level field. It highlights the importance of fairness, and also it's more about what we can do as a human, including Peter Singer has mentioned about to really give them animal rights, protect them as they equal lives with human. So animal liberation or animal rights, vegetarianism is an ethical requirement to just reduce their animal consumption, reduce our damage on them, to highlight the fact that we are having a leveling playing field. It also requires a disruption on the mechanism, the slaughtering field, animal, etc. It's a very aggressive topic, but such a aggressive topic has already been very influential. So in the average consumers, it is very influential. And in west of the world, there are very strong vegetarian campaigns, which is backed by it. We use the three realms in wild animal welfare, protect animal as equal lives with humans. This is our background. And now let's take a look how Confucius view. What are Confucius' views on this topic, and whether Confucianism care about animals? There are some quotations from the analects. Basically speaking, if you believe this is about human-centric, especially in the analects, the stable being burned down when he was at court. On his return, he said, "Has any man been hurt? He didn't ask about whether the horses were hurt." Zigong wished to do away with the offering of sheep connected with the inauguration of the first day of each month. Master said, "Zigong, you love the sheep, but I love the ceremony. It is valuable." And also the master observed with a sigh, "It is possible to associate with birds and beasts as if they were the same with us. If I associated not with the people, with mankind, with whom shall I associate? If the right principles prevailed through the empire, where would be no use for me to change its states?" And also the filial piety nowadays means the support of one's parents, but dogs and horses likewise are able to do something in the way of support. Without reverence, what is there to distinguish the one support given from the other. We have to highlight, distinguish from animal and a human being. The master, speaking of Zhonggong, said, if the calf of a brindled cow can be red and horned, and although men may not wish to use it, will the spirits of the mountains and rivers put it aside? And this is very important. The master also argued, angled, but did not use a net. He shot, but not at birds perching. Looks like they don't take care about the animals. But it only highlights the fact that, like Confucius, prioritize the value of human towards that of animal. For example, in analysts, Confucius highlights again the leverage of the animals should be under constraint.
And here we have more messages about the attitudes toward the animals by Confucius. This is a famous dialogue between Mengxue and Ken Hui of Liang. And is to express that every can be very kind. This is a very famous dialogue. And from this dialogue, the king asks the monks that can I be competent to love and protect the people? And monks said yes, because once I said I saw that you see a cow is going to be killed, and you do not want to see this cow to be killed, and it's too crude, and then you get a sheep instead of the ox or the cow, and the monks thinks that you are very kind, and I understand that you really want to take care of it. Maybe the general public do not understand. And the king said that, yes, the people say that I don't want to give up on the ox, but I treated it with a sheep. And Mencius said that actually the ox and the sheep are actually the same. They are innocent. And the king said that it's very simple because you didn't see the sheep going to death, you only see the ox. This is an important message, that we do not want to see the animals to be killed, and we would like to see the animals be kept in good living. And we do not want to harm the animals if we hear that they are very stressful and they are going to death. And this kind of attitude is the humanity of everyone. So the gentlemen would like to keep themselves away. It's not hypocrisy, and it is to protect and to show the kindness. And there are also the misunderstanding or mistaken saying that the Confucius are very demanding on the living standards. But actually, if we check the literature from Confucius, they really value very simple, plain lifestyle, and the rice finally cleaned, and the meat cut quite small. This is a very commonly understand. And according to Confucius, that at 50 years old, you can get decent clothing, and at 70s, you can get meat. And this is the principles for good governance. So in the ideal life of Confucius, at the age of 70, when you need to take good care of the health, you can take some meat. So in the most part of the human life, vegan or vegetarian is a very important part, it's the mainstream. And it is also said here that a superior man and his stables and the kitchen at a distance, he did not tread whatever there was, such a thing as blood or tainted air. Also, we needed to restrain ourselves from overuse of the animals. This is for the long-term usage. So we needed to have appropriate and rational usage of the animal resources. And without a appropriate reason, you shall not kill the animals. So this is what we get from the Confucius theories. So they want to protect the animals. They do not want to kill animals and reduce the consumption of animal products. This is the basic attitudes of Confucius toward the animals. And there are a lot of quotations that can support these opinions. And we might have some misunderstandings, so we need to correct our perception. So we need to consider the worldview of harmony between man and nature of Confucius. And the basic idea is that the man and the nature are actually the same. So with this view, they exhibited the way of heaven, calling yin and yang, the way of earth, calling the weak and the strong, and the way of man under the names of benevolence and righteousness. So the spirit is actually the same and connected. So an important message is also the motto of Tsinghua University is that heaven is motion, gives the idea of strength. The superior man, in accordance with this, nerves himself to ceaseless activity. So the heaven and the earth are most inclusive, and the man shall also respect the nature. So how men treat the nature and the animals are something ethnical. So it's not a total separation between man and nature like what we see from the Western culture. In the traditional culture of China, how do humans treat the animals is different from the modern history of the West. We do not want to conquer and quest the nature. We in Chinese culture believes that we shall respect and we shall conform to the laws of nature. We shall not be willful. And some people see that Confucius is the anthropocentrism, but this is a restrained anthropocentrism. It's not a willfulness. And according to Confucius, there's a harmony between the nature and the man. There's a harmony with the heaven and earth, and the harmony with the sun and the moon, and is the harmonious relationship against any conflict. This kind of view of the world by Confucius provides the foundation for animal welfare and animal protection. So in this kind of worldview, it's very easy that we get to the ethical view of all things in the universe as one body. And this is according to Cheng Hao. And they believe that the mountains and the rivers and everything are originally connected with human as an integrated body. And the humane person regards all things in the universe as one body. There's nothing which is not a part of him. This is a very important part of the Neo-Confucius of the Song Dynasty and the Ming Dynasty. It's a very well-recognized theory. Also, Wang Yangming believes that when the rain, dew, thunder, sun, and the moon, stars, animals, the plants, mountains, everything, they are essentially of one body with men. This is well accepted by the scholars. And In the Western culture, there's the discussion about the relationship between the human and the animals and the nature. But in Confucius, we already have this kind of integrated view. According to Wang Yangming, the superior man takes the human and the nature as one body. And we have everything in the heaven on the earth as one, not only the superior man, but also the minority man. They also have this one body concept, but they might not realize or see it by themselves. But if you see a child falling into a well, they also can feel the worry. So we are all connected. We are all the same. The children, the animals, all the people. If we see the animals are in hunger or in horror or in stress, we will feel the similar feelings and we will have the empathy. So this is the reflection of the one body with the people, heaven, earth, and all the creators. And this is from the root of life. This is common for all the living creatures. What we need to do is to explore these kind of feelings rooted deep from our humanity and to release this huge potential. And this is by Zhu Xi about Yi. According to Zhu Xi, what is Yi? And he mentioned that the righteousness emphasize that every part of the world in the nature and on the earth can have the right to exist and do not influence and conflict with others. So the human system, the human society, and the nature system can exist in a harmonious way. So the Confucius thinking is not only for the human society, it's beyond the human society. It includes everything on the earth, in the heaven, and the animals is for sure an essential part of it. Not only this is reflected in these extract theories. We also have seen the specific measures for animal protection. There are government agencies. For example, in Tang Dynasty, there is the Yu, the agency that is responsible for environmental protection and animal protection. And according to the rules, that at the time of spring and summer is the time for the animals to grow. And at the autumn time, you shall not burn the field. And this is in line with the environmental protection rules, and the Chinese people respect the timing, the weather, and the status of the animals and the plants, and respect the laws of nature. There's a similar organizational institution and the laws and regulations in Song Dynasty. For example, from February to September, the people shall not hunt the insects or the turtles or the birds. In order to protect the animals, the government will seize these tools for hunting animals. And we are not even doing as a good job as in the Song Dynasty. And in Song Dynasty, hunting elephants is prohibited in Lingnan area. The tools have been confiscated, and it is prohibited to use the fur of the deer to make hats. So these are the specific measures for animal protection. It is the implementation of animal protection theories.
They also discussed the ethical status of animals. Actually, they are put between the human and plants. There are a lot of discussions on that. And also, for example, animals has the sense of knowing something. Yeah, and for animals, and they have also better understanding of human, but especially for the plants, totally different. And also, we have learned about a lot from even the monkeys. So this is the ethical, the perspective, which is very aligned with the understanding of the Confucius. Wang Fuzhi, another guru, mentioned we're talking about affinity, the relationship between human and also animals is something we can feel, we can sense. It's not distorted by us. It's not because the relationship between human and animals are closer that we have held a more protective attitudes towards them. And it is still a little bit different. This is also from Confucius' view. And the attitudes from the Confucius to animal are really deem it as a variety between human and a plant. Now is the attitudes towards the animals. First of all, they eat meat. They still, meat can be eaten. But you eat meat instead of reckless waste, or you cannot be ruthless. There are many of thoughts. It highlights no abuse, no reckless waste, and no abuse. But it also highlights all of the animals and even the beasts. Yeah, you can just push them back to where they come from, not try to kill them all. If when it comes to such a attitude, it highlights the importance of ecological protection, conservation. When we are talking about the Confucius perspective, and especially for ethics, it highlights the importance of, for example, there's a priority, and this is more about to fit for our original thoughts. You should show your filial to your parents, affection to parents, love to others, kindness to creators, to protect them. That's the Confucian ethics. So it is of some difference. And also you can see that the balance and the priorities among affections to parents is so important. And if your human body is in one, and when you encounter some dangers, you use your hand to protect your head and eyes. It's not because you are going to treat not well to your extremities. And also we're talking about the beasts and a kindness to creatures. And we're talking about the treatment, extent of the treatment. And it is really not very easy. It's not a forceful willingness. So even there's no certain deep understanding of the details of that, but we want to treat everybody, every part of our body equally important. And here we are talking about the just the difference. integration, we follow the same principles. And when it comes to such a attitude within the animal ethics, people think the Confucius view is not that thorough, but still it can be easily understood by humankind. From the Western animal welfare is very influential. It is accepted by most of the people, animal rights. And also when you're talking about the animal liberation, can only be accepted by the minorities. And we're talking about the Confucians ethics, and we're talking about animal welfare. Well, not all of us is vegetarian yet. And this fits for the actual situation scenarios. And out of this Confucius as a whole system, and we're talking about the Kang Youwei, especially Mr. Kang Youwei is deemed as a scope of Confucius thoughts. And he has already encountered the modern society. He wrote in the book of Great Harmony. So Kang Youwei's Great Harmony mainly reflects the idea of Great Harmony formed at the end of the 19th. So who highlights the importance of the Great Harmony. And also it is the really a new world of a great harmony. And it has given us a lot of inspirations. In the past, for Confucians, they really say no to Buddhism, who say you should have access to meat. But here, at that time, thanks to the technical constraints, and if you want to treat your parents very well, if they're elder, if they cannot eat meat, physically speaking, their nutrition is not enough. But today, when we have these technologies, we're talking about the alternative proteins are working very well. I think that just following the basic thoughts of Confucius, they can accept the vegetarian. It's not a very simple regulation. They can make actually if conditions permit, they can go vegetarian accordingly. So last but not least, let's go quickly from my part to wrap up. This is also from the priorities. It highlights from inside out. There's a certain ordering of priorities. So the 4 principles is as follows. The first is talking about integral part of the human, of the heaven, of the earth, but it also highlights practice. Yeah, it is based on our practical methodology. It will also consider all of the objects, targets exist, no matter it's animal, it's plant, it's humanity. There's a priority level, there's hierarchical level, a relationship of which can also be deemed as interconnected. There are some close relationship are not close. There's also a expansion from inside out. If we can take into account in a very comprehensive manner. So this is from animals' perspective. Yeah, all in all, we believe human together with the other living animals should be taken into account. And when we are actually practicing it as a daily routine, it is a little bit far away from us. And especially it is closer to the mountains, the rivers, plants. So Confucius animal conservation following the law of nature, be compliant with the law of nature. That's number 1. The law of nature is highlighted by the Confucian perspective. The importance is to take a great harmony view and also to be of kindness, to protect the animal, reduce the animal consumption. And also it mentioned about to take the holistic view of the unity of heaven and man and the unity of heaven and the earth as the supreme principle. Take the tolerance as starting point to love animal, oppose cruel killings, and also pay attention to sustainable recycling and advocate eco-friendliness and saving, no waste. It can be easily understood by Chinese, and we don't need to make too much like the endeavors. We're not asking all of us will go vegetarian. And also compared to our mindset of health, it is very well aligned with that. Okay, last but not least, from our history, we are also impacted by the Confucius. So to a large extent, and we have quite big numbers of vegetarian in China, I think. It is related not only to our productivity, but also to our philosophy, our attitude and mindset, our understanding on animal conservation. Yeah, you can take that into account. So many people may say, do we need to learn from also the dietary habits from the northern China, especially the nations of nomadic pastoralism? No, we have a lot of intake of the animal products. We over consume these animal products, and to a large extent, it is because we have forgot the wisdom of Confucian thoughts, and we do need also to get back to these thoughts to get more nutrition, align that with a modern animal welfare and a protection perspective. Thank you so much.
我觉得刚才蒋老师特别细致的把儒家的这个动物观和伦理观呢，跟我们就是层层递进的做了
Yeah,
一个
thank you very much, Mr. Jiang, for sharing with us about that.
回归到我们自己文化的这样的一个本源。
And get back to our own culture.
顺应天道，天人合一。
And we're talking about the integral part of heaven and also of human. And I'm talking about one health, one welfare, which was very aligned with China's original thoughts. Thanks again.
下面的话呢，我们有请出西南民族大学学报编辑部研究员、博士生导师尹志。
Now I'm gonna invite Dr. Yin Bangzhi to give us a brief discussion on Buddhist based diets and social impacts. Yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. So I'm talking about the Buddhist, the ahimsa-based diets. I appreciate Dr. Jiang for your sharing. You have made a great sharing. You're talking about following the law of the nature, and I think it's great expression. I agree with him, Mr. Jiang. All lives are sacred, and urgent avoidance of violence, and especially I think Confucian perspective has also included a lot of culture of the ahimsa. On one hand, this physiological view from Confucian is very interesting. And also we have traditional Chinese medicine, pro-health, etc. Many contents are still under researched, and also there are many best practice in this field, which deserves our further hard work. Professor Jiang shared with us from a perspective of integration of Eastern and West and East. Now I'm gonna share with you from stories, anecdotal observations, and a personal sentiment.
I hope that my presentation can be organized and can be helpful for you. And in August this year, um, I stayed for a while in a very remote area of the Ganzi province region, and I have seen something happened there to the Tibetan people. And in our mind, the Tibetan people, the monks and the Lama, they eat meat. But one day, I saw that consumption of meat is a very serious thing. It's not that because they are forced to eat meat because there's no vegetable in Tibet. I lived in a temple on the top of the mountain, and there's no street or road from the top of the mountain to the food. And one day I went to the kitchen, and the Chabi Lama chef told me that a cow at the foot of the mountain had died. And it was a member of the herd owned by the monastery and raised by local people. And they have the very serious ritual for these cattle, and they have performed a crossover ritual for the deceased cow. It's about over 3 hours, and I stand on the top of the mountain. I can see them performing the ritual for the cow. After the ritual, they brought the meat back up to the mountain, and in the several days later, we eat the meat from the deceased cow. So their consumption of meat is totally different from us. The beef for them is an ingredient before they eat the meat. They show the full respect to the life of the cow. This kind of respect is very different from what we have in the life of the Han people. Like if there is a people deceased, we do not have the crossover ritual for the deceased people. But for the Tibetan monks, they spend over 3 hours to perform the crossover ritual for the deceased cow. So they consume the meat of the cow, but it's not for the good taste of the meat. They consider this kind of meat is a clean meat. It's from the cow whose spirit had crossed over. So this is commonly seen from the people who believe in Buddhism. Another story to show the respect to life is that it was raining one day, and the Tibetan people will hold their umbrellas and the baskets, and they go out on the road, and they pick up the earthworms and the bugs and get them away from the road. So when the cars drive by, they will not be run over by the car, or they will not be stepped on by the human beings walking by. So it was raining heavily that day. It's not only one person or two, it's a group of local people try to help these earthworms and the bugs. Later, I drove several miles, and I got to the house of Tibet local people, and the woman of that household also get her basket and umbrellas and go out to save the earthworms. So it's not just a random case. although it's a very remote area of China, but they have the tradition to show love and protection for life. So it's a tradition, it's a custom, and this custom originated from their Buddhist faith. They live in a place very remote, very far away, disconnected. But due to this disconnection to the modern society, they have their tradition and the custom very well reserved. I think this is not only something belonging to the Tibetan people, and the Han people also have a similar traditions. When I was a kid, and if you have dig out the earthworms from the soil and then take the worm to go fishing or to catch the frogs, the elder people, especially who were born before the establishment of China, and they will tell the children do not do that because you shall not take life. If you kill, you take a life, and you will repay with your own. This is a tradition that is very common in my hometown. And this tradition shows the relationship between the animals and the human beings. So if you kill an animal for fun, it's also a serious consequence due to your behavior. You take a life, and then you might need to repay this with your own life. So this is the relationship between animals and human beings, the relationship between two lives. And this is also influenced by Buddhism in long term. According to Buddhism, your behaviors will create impact, and this impact will exist in long time, and this impact will go beyond the time you live. It will be passed down generations after generations. So this is from Buddhism. The influence of Buddhism is also observed in other areas. For example, the street names are by the Buddhism names. No matter the Han people or the Tibetan people, no matter where there's the Buddhist faith, there's the tradition that you shall not kill animals, you shall not overeat animals. And these traditions will impact our diet, and it will also influence our attitudes to the wild animals. And you can see these reflected in the everyday behaviors. For example, the Tibetan people do not eat fish from the lakes. If you travel to Tibet, you will see the lakes are called holy lakes. And in the lakes or the river, you will not see tourist boat. If you go to a park, here you will see the tourist boats for entertainment. But in the Tibetan areas, if you catch fish from the lakes, that is very rare. We do not catch fish, we do not catch crabs for food. And you will find a lot of fish living in the rivers and the lakes. It's everywhere. But if we look at what happened to the rivers now comparing with 40 or 50 years ago, now we have more pollution in the rivers. And people tended to catch fishes more, and it's very difficult to find fish in the rivers. In the past, there are so many fish in the river, and even really big ones. For example, you get a basket into the river and you pull up the basket and there will be fish filled in the basket. People think it's just a story. It's not possible, but it is possible. But now it's not possible. This kind of changes happen in a very short period of time. It's mainly because our attitudes changed and the society changed and the way of production change. There's a lot of pollution in the rivers in the rural area. We cannot even find very small fish in the river. According to the Buddhist tradition, we shall not overkill, overeat. But this kind of tradition is not popular anymore. It has been significantly weakened. Many people use electric fires or other tools to catch fish, like the workers from the factory. They have been hugely influenced by the industrialization and industrial production methods. They are not very much influenced by Buddhism. And the young people at their 20s or 30s, these young people think it's a very interesting thing to catch fish from the river. I don't think it's a very healthy way, and the river is polluted. How can you eat a fish from that kind of water? The rural people like this kind of wild fish. They like this kind of special food, different from what they can get from the market. And they even catch these very small fish. So it's very rare, and the fish are very hard to find in the rivers anymore. Besides the fish, other meat like pork has been growing very quickly as well. As the income increases, as the people's concepts change, the people believe we can afford the good things, these nutritious things, and they believe meat means nutrition and means good food. That's why the meat consumption increases quickly. As Mr. Jiang has talked about the Confucius philosophy about diet, there's an important thing from Confucius that diet is highly related to culture. The same is in the Buddhism. There's a discussion in Buddhism, and there's a very practical understanding. And the Buddha said, all living beings live by food, which means all the living beings need food to survive. But the food, this idea, has a broader connotation than what we have now. And the Buddhist food definition is a very comprehensive and a very broad definition. And the Buddhist food is divided into two types. And the first is the people who do not believe in Buddhism. And there are four types of food. And the first is the Kabalinka Vihara, which refers to the material food or physical food, like the vegetables. We need to cut the vegetables in pieces. The second type is by different timing of the day, like you have 1 meals, 2 meals, or 3 meals a day. So this is also part of the 断食, and the role is to satisfy the nutritious demand of human beings. And the second type is the visa, and is more related to the feelings, and the feelings that can make us feel happy and can satisfy the desire of the mankind. And it's also closely related to the Kabbalinkariham. And when we have food, we want to have different senses, like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and also the food who provide this enjoyment, simple enjoyment, is also included.
And also the next things, thoughts, imagination, and desires are very well satisfied. So this is in Buddhism and the Manasaktana. In Chinese, 四十, the fourth is the Vijnana, which is correspondingly opposite side of the eros. The third one is satisfying your desire. The fourth one is to satisfy your ego about your own consciousness, even subconsciousness, including self-recognition, recognition on your self-development, self-satisfaction. So we're talking about the world, 食, diet, which satisfy the topics covering physical, material, and spiritual demand of human. And today, people already have realized that health is closely related to psychological states, frames of our mind, and even the social setting. Next page. Next is that it is more about to increase our wisdom. So including the enthusiastic nourishment, the Buddhamas are right. Dharma is always to be upheld with pleasure, cultivated with goodness, including the meditative, joyful nourishment. Inside it is tranquil, bright, mind and soul are joyful. The third is the mindful nourishment, always maintaining in a status of the Zen, to nurture life's essence with the mind enlightened and a heart full of joy. Fourth is the void nourishment, whatever and whatever one's being is, or whatever it's trying to do, it's always determined with a very good vows. It gives you really different level of joy. The fifth is the liberation, great liberation nourishment. The mind is always immaculate, free, uninfluenced by the material world, and cultivated in the body. And you really have the real freedom. And also, it satisfies really the need of at your mind. And again, and for the sake of Buddhism, it's one of the most important part. We do need this kind of the diet. Next page. And again, compared to the Westerners, we have made some comparison, especially Western people also advocate vegetarianism, but the connotation behind is different. Dr. Jiang has made a very great conclusion. So in my mind, Buddhism, compassionate vegetarianism is also based on joyful. It's about to discover the original nature of humankind. It includes empathy against animals, compassion against animals. It is backed by the following reasons. Especially, you will forget the pains of the other So we should not forget the sufferings of the other live beings. That's one of the fundamental reasons. And we learned also from Mr. Ho, Melinda's slides has given us a very good introduction. And then number two, all beings killed for meat are as related to our parents and also our loved ones. And there's a certain relationship. The third one is that one will be thrown into endless cycles of reincarnation. One's soul is affected by the evil thoughts instead of the good ones. So as long as you have such a heart, it is an evil one. Your heart will also be damaged, impaired. And for the people from Indian talking incarnation, right? Reincarnation. And I need to address those kind of issues. And then next, other beings can also feel pain and or even resentment when being killed, which will continuously sow seeds of resentment, even revenge among humans. And this is also a very important part. We can see that we haven't considered that, or if we are taking food, taking meat, I mean. So this is a very important topic. Next, when we're talking about the meat attitude towards meat, there are so-called three kinds of clean meat, Vajrayana. And this is the concept of what to eat and what not to eat. Yeah, especially I say that you should not eat unclean meat obtained on any of the three conditions. If you see me killing the animal for you, they kill a chicken. If I visit them, I didn't eat. Or if I see it, if I didn't see it in person, but someone tell me, and if it is real, they try to accommodate me, and I may say no. The third is that, and even we haven't seen something, we haven't heard about that, and we visited someone we know that hunter kill animals frequently. For example, they already have killed that, prepared that before I came. So based on that, it is for me, and I will not try that as well. If they did that for the sake of me, I will say no to it. Yeah, you can also see that there are 10 different kinds of meat they cannot eat, from that of human, elephant, horses, dogs, snakes, lions, tigers, bears, hyenas, and also under some specific circumstances, you can use the blood and the meat for curing treatment. But if you're healthy, you should not eat anything made from the raw blood and the meat. Yeah, and from Taiwan, from other regions, while they are buying it, we can see there is really any composition from animals. They just take into account some principles from Buddhism. If we're talking about the midless Mahayana, their attitudes are a little bit even more aggressive. Meatless Mahayana is talking about meat eating cuts off the great matter. So the Buddha orders a perspective against it. Why? Matter tastes no better than meat. If you just indulge in the latter, you will abandon the matter and start to kill. Eating meat hurts less matter, and taking life hurts the greater matter. Less matter is the seed of the greater matter. When the seed dies, matter does not exist, and there will no longer be any reason for all living beings to live longer. From the perspective of causal relationships, the lesser matter is the cause, and the greater matter is the result. Well, you were talking about this Tibetan scenario. I think that is belongs to this part. So eating meat is an offense to matter, and that's cutting off the way to ultimate Buddhist practice. Tibetan Buddhism is following the greater matter, reincarnation. And this is what they really address. They're talking about, therefore, within and outside of the sutras, with the exception of the Bodhisattva, meat consumption is not even allowed. Among Sravaka disciples, meat can't even be given in charity, let alone be eaten. Abstinence is the foundation of all virtues, and the matter is the root of all deeds. Eating meat while refraining from killing is like a tree trying to grow when its trunk and roots are damaged. Next page. We're talking also about abstinence from meat on the 1st and the 15th days of each lunar month. What I talked about also very classical, the concept after it is spread from India to China. So we combine that with the local vegetarian perspective, starting from the very ancient. We have such a philosophy and a mindset. We call it abstinence, taking vegetarian food. It's not from India. We already have it in China. Abstinence means you want to purify your heart to understand what you could do and what you could not do. It is now put together with our food. So we use the word eat, eat abstinence, which shows us a understanding about civilization of the food. And we have especially the tradition of taking vegetarian food. It's not for the economical reasons, especially from civilization. It plays a very important role. At very early stage, we already mentioned, especially we review, rethink of our traditional thoughts. And in China, we say the idiom like eating birds and animals raw have long been used to reject the primitive barbarian diet and advocate vegetarianism. Even prior to major sacrificial rituals offerings, our ancestors will spend days abstaining from meat to cleanse the body, purify the body and the mind. Afterwards, King Jie of the Xia dynasty was overthrown by Tang of Shang dynasty around 1600 years BCE. Because of extravagance and overconsumption, you can tell from many of our stories, the later generations of monarchs, of ministries, practiced the abstinence ritual on the 1st and 15th days of each month. The common people followed suit, and the practice evolved into a custom which was called 朔望斋 abstinence in Chinese. These 2 days are now deemed as fixed, the days, the daily routine. You may have access to abstinence. So this is a tradition. It belongs to the royal family at the beginning. but afterwards it is mimicked by the general public. That's why we fixated the first and 15 days. And also it is deemed more from the Buddhism culture, not our own Chinese one. And also, this is really a manifestation from that.
In our diet, there's a mainstream value formed. That is, we take the veggie as the mainstream or the main part in our diet. And it emphasized that in terms of our diet, we need to show the benevolence, we need to care the health, we need to have a reservation. So this is also reflected by the Confucius. And it said that a gentleman is one who is only willing to see birds and animals being born or to hear their sounds, but does not have the heart to see them die before him or eat their flesh. And there are also the ancient masters saying that we shall not consume the flesh. And the TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, believes that the meat is harmful for our health. So from the perspective of healthcare, the vegetarian diet is preferred. Some young ladies now also prefer the vegetarianism and is to keep fit and maintain health and maintain a good skin condition. And we also have a invention that is the tofu. Tofu contains the protein from the lumens, and it's a very good supplement of protein, an important alternative of meat. So tofu is considered as the replacement of meat, and the tofu is very important in the history. And Sun Zhongshan also gives very high remarks to tofu. So there's an ancient tradition that you are what you eat. So your diet represents your ethics and your values. Next page, please. And this tradition is reinforced by Buddhism. And more people accept vegetarian. Like in India, the noble people are mainly the vegetarian, and this is also reflected in the Buddhism rules. And the Emperor Wu of the Liang dynasty has combined the tradition with the Buddhism, and according to his order, there shall be no meat sacrificial. There's no meat on the Buddhist sacrificial rituals. There's another specific measure that the animals in water or on land shall not be hunted or captured. The doctors, especially the royal doctors, shall not use meat-based medicine. And the Asian people make the clothes out of silk. And in order to protect the silkworms, the silk is prohibited. In order to spread these thinkings, the articles are written to explain the reasons. And vegetarianism is promoted from the monasteries among the monks. And the Buddhism prohibited liquor and meat. So the emperor also ordered this to be implemented in the country. He believes that as the king of the state, he can formulate these rules in his orders. So starting from that time, meat is prohibited in the diet of the monks. And this becomes well accepted by the people who believe in Buddhism. So this is an excellent tradition in China region for Buddhism, and in overseas, vegetarian tradition is not strictly implemented as in China. So the vegan dishes in Buddhism is adopted. And Buddhism has promoted the culture of vegan dishes. And the vegan dishes become very famous. And it's very well recognized by the general public. And the name is vegan dishes. And also it means it can purify your mind. And it's made of the fruit, vegetables, and beans. There's no animal derived ingredients. And there's also not 5 pungent flavors, and the eggs and dairy products are not used. So this is also similar to the vegan diet in the Western culture, and it becomes a cuisine in China, other than the 4 major cuisines in China. The Buddhist cuisine or the vegan dishes are really cherished by a specific group of people, and they believe this Buddhist cuisine is health preserving, and is the typical example of the traditional Chinese medicine, and it's also a fit to the Confucius theory. And the Buddhist cuisines have several thousands of history, and the Buddhist masters, they have vegan dishes for life, and they live very long, and they maintain very healthy lifestyle. So from practice in everyday life, people see the benefits of Buddhist cuisine. So Chinese people think the Buddhist cuisine is to preserve health. It's not in shortage of nutrition. It's not harmful to health. And there's no barrier against the Buddhist cuisine or vegan dishes in China. And the Buddhist cuisine or vegan dishes have 3 systems or 3 types. First is the Buddhist cuisine or the vegan dishes at the monastery. And these monastery style is a mixture of different ingredients and cooked at the same time. It's not a very delicate or refined style. I don't know whether you have tried these vegan dishes at the monastery. Usually it's just one type, but even though it's very simple, the dish is very tasty, and the monk chef might cook the dish in a hurry, because in some monastery there's no designated chef, and the monks, after their daily ritual performance, spend some time on cooking. But even with a very short time of cooking, it's still very tasty. And the second is the imperial style of the vegan dishes, and it has valuable rare ingredients, very delicate and very rich taste. And the third is the folk style of the vegan taste, vegan dishes. And China is a very large country, so different regions have the local folk style. And the folk style now is the mainstream. Across the whole country, we have seen the vegan restaurants. And there's a very fast development of these folk style vegan dishes. And it can also be further divided into pure vegan and the mock meat. And around the year of 2000, the folk style also is divided into the imperial or high-end premium food and the mainstream food. But now we didn't see the trend. And the folk style vegan dishes are getting more and more popular. For example, in Chengdu, we have very successful restaurants offering the vegan food, and it can also be combined with the hot pot and the other local food.
观念呢，它是建立在就是一种法界观上面的。他认为吃东西是
And Buddhism believes
因果的，有这个影响的。
there's a cause and effect of the food you consume. If you consume a lot of meat, it's harmful to the environment and is also harmful for our material and spiritual environment. And there's the positive and negative impact. And all these are influenced by our behavior, and eating is a very important element. What we eat decides what kind of cause and effect results we can get. And the healthy diet can give us the decent life, and it's also a environmental friendly and civilized style. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Ying. Thank you for giving us the details about the Buddhism and the Buddhism concepts of food. And Buddhism have a deep influence on the diet and the lifestyle of the Chinese people. And it's not only the nourishment to our body, it's also the mind and the spiritual nourishment. Thank you very much, Mr. Ying, again. And next, we will have Dr. Professor Cheng Baoliang, the Taoist philosophy and the Dao scholar, PhD in engineering, working at the International Business School of Shanxi Normal University. He has many years of research experience. So welcome, Professor Cheng. Hi, everyone. Next, I would like to present the Taoist approach to food selection and animal protection. Melinda, Professor Jiang, Professor Ying, dear friends. First, I would like to thank Melinda, the executive director of a Good Food Fund, for inviting me to share about the approaches of Taoism to food selection and animal protection. And also, here we have Professor Jiang, Professor Ying, and I feel really happy to see them here today. And my topic today is the Taoist approach to food selection and animal protection. And in terms of the influence on the traditional Chinese culture, the Taoism or Taoist is very critical. And according to Taoism, people originate from the nature, from the Yellow Emperor's inner canon. Man is created by the convergence of heaven and earth.
那么《周易》的易传也讲啊，天地音韵，万物化纯，男女构。
So we are talking about the very importance, the yellow powers and the canon. A man is created by the convergences of heaven and earth, and also from commentaries on I Ching, a misty perfusion of heaven and earth brings the world into fine beings. So these are very key relationships. Humankind is part of nature, and is an inseparable part. They divide animals into 5 categories. Next, they divided that into 5 worms theories. The first is that, and this is means it's based upon the dragon, the scaled worms of the east, the genus of fish dominated by the dragon. The next is feathered worms of the southern, genus of birds dominated by the especially the phoenix. And also the fourth one is naked worms of the center, no genus, dominated by the Homo sapiens, and also the hairworms of the west, genus of wolves and bears, dominated by the tiger. And also have the molluscan worms of the north, genus of soft shell turtles, mussels, dominated by the turtle. And also human is also have a similar characteristics. And only a human comes there without anything. And if you deem a human as a concept of the naked worms, means you are not the number one dominant one. And for the other animals, for they may bring their own belongings like hairy, but human is naked. Only human, yeah. As they are evolving, as they are moving forward, they are really getting things from the nature. And this is also a very important prerequisite. Human, for example, is getting better and better, and after evolution. And also, if that will be the case, we must remember that human is a precondition, including everything in the world. So the history of our evolution, the history of exploiting the nature world with really different stages marked by what's exploited. And in other words, human sustenance very much depends on nature, and all things bred thereby. Human beings live on nature's bounty and therefore are deeply indebted to it. And also Lao Tzu believes that if we disobey the world's principle, that means we will really have some conflict. That means, next page first. From Taoist perspective, the laws of nature is superior to the rules built from human. And if what we are building is against the worldwide nature, the nature of law, and will be destroyed by them. That means all things in nature are the promise of human existence and a result of natural selection over time. human choices cannot replace nature's choices, and a short-term human behavior cannot change the result of the long-term evolution. And a human still has a limited history. We cannot display the law of nature, the rules we built, if it is in conflict with that of the national ones, it will be destroyed by that. Another important example is Xunzi, and also they believe that there are many advanced laws and concepts at that time, and also who mentioned human food can be selected only within the promise of national selection, and human selected instead of nature selected food shall be treated with caution. And the nature between heaven and earth is really eternal. We are still living within such a range. If you cannot make it very well, you are really destroying yourself. Since we know about this, and especially against such a view, and we understand about philosophy, it will be easier for us to make a better decision. And when a human are selecting the food, right, whether we should go through plant-based food or the animal-based one, and we are told by different people as we are evolving, it really feel like we eat everything. And also, as we are selecting food, and first of all, it is the result of our evolution. It's trained by the nature, and is selected. The food we eaten is selected. And for example, we eat whole grains. Whole grains is a natural selection. Why you don't eat anything else? For if you eat too much the others, you may get illness. But whole grains is very good. Yeah, while you are taking these kind of animal-based food, since we already mentioned, like Mr. Ho given us a good sharing, and we eat more and more food. So from a long run perspective, as we are evolving, in terms of the evolution we have, especially there are some proportion of animal-based food and plant-based food. As we are selecting the ratio, and we need to pay attention to especially the result from the natural selection. You cannot, for example, think of the plant-based, animal-based food are very nutritious, and you forget about the natural food, the vegetable food. You cannot replace the natural selection. You have to be very, very cautious. So as we are selecting the food, this is really very important. There was only one standard. We call it life benefiting or health preserving. Yao has already mentioned, wise is the pursuit of knowledge and auspicious are the benefits to the growth of life. Taoists tend to follow vegan diets, but do not reject all animal-based food. Grains are really fundamental and the key to nourish life and vitality. It's a very important thing. If you lack vitality, if your life quality is not good, you are at sub-health or not healthy. So psychologically speaking, physically speaking, it's not auspicious at all. And people believe if you really kill too much, have excessive kill, it's not very auspicious. And if you see the animals, if you cannot appreciate the life. If you cannot feel the happiness, joy, if you just want to kill them, that means there's a very big anger, something you are not happy, that will damage you. And we believe you will also even be killed by something else. This is reincarnation. From Taoist perspective, when you're about to kill that, you started to have such a thought of killing, you kill it. You are killing what's in your mind. So a Taoist advocate the vegetarian food to preserve it. They don't want to kill it, but they don't say no to some, especially the animal-based food. When it comes to the structure, so it should be based on whole grain. Why whole grain? So out of the whole grain, it includes, and especially the whole process of growing. As it is growing, and even the very essence of that has been very well preserved. And there would be the next generation of food. And the food is for the sake of preserving your life. You really pay attention to the opportunities, the vitalities from that. So, and also we find that we are talking about whole grains. The yellow empress inner canon, one essence of life is nourished by the 5 whole grains, assisted by the 5 fruits, benefited by the 5 animals. Animal food can also benefit you, enriched by the 5 vegetables, all in their compatible status. And this is a very important criteria. From Taoist, they believe people have 5 the organs. And we have heart, have liver, spleen, we have lung, kidney. They are dedicated states for spleen, like sweet and likes mild food. For us, lung like something spicy. And when you have these kind of flavor, when there is no conflict, well, it benefits us. And if there is not such a great relationship, of great harmonious, it doesn't benefit our body. So, and the 5 states is also like the cold, hot, about lukewarm and cool. We have also sour, sweet, etc. Many females like the sour fruit. Yeah, and also it is the very important traditional Chinese concept. It may also help the kidney to have better nourishment. There's the 5 food flavors from the Taoist traditional Chinese medicine. Really pay a lot of attention to it, from yellow empress, anakin. So all of these have their compatible status. That's the 5 flavors and the Taoism Lao Tzu's verse. Okay, that is too much informative. But again, from the Taoist, it highlights your health preserving, which is based on the 5 flavors: the sweet, bitter, sour, salty, and spicy, which are associated with these 5 elements: earth, fire, wood, water, and metal, respectively. And we can see, no matter we are talking about of the fruit, grains, they are giving you some nourishment and help, while animal only accounts for like 1/3 out of the big picture. Taoist advocate also to have more the vegetable and the fruit, which benefit people more. Now, and we can also see as they are selecting different food, apart from some highlights on its flavors, they also focus on something else. They are selecting the food. It is a very complicated engineering. I try to list their priorities. Number one, you should be more aware of what you're good at. I'm talking what about individuals, including the strengths and the weakness. Before you can select the food, if your spleen is not very good, you should take something, for example, sweet, right? Something sweet, not take something cold.
And it's not to eat sugar. It just means that after you chew the food, you can feel the sweetness like rice. If you chew the rice in the mouth, you can feel the natural sweetness. And there's a traditional Chinese herb that is the ganzao. You can also get the natural sweetness. It's not extremely sweet, but you can feel the slight sweetness from the licorice. And the second rule is that you need to understand the environment you live in. According to TCM, the external environment has a huge impact on your health. There are 6 elements in the external environment, and they call it the 6 evils: wind, cold, heat, dampness, dryness, and fire. I can give you an example. Like Mr. Ying has mentioned in his presentation, Mr. Ying is in Chengdu. Chengdu people like hot pot, which is hot and spicy. Why the Chengdu people like spicy food? Because the spiciness help to remove the damp from the local environment. The environment is very humid, so they eat spicy food to expel the dampness from their body. And thirdly, you need to understand your personality for the food selection. And there are 7 emotions: joy, anger, worry, overthinking, sadness, fear, and shock. So how that impact our health? Because these emotions are related to our organs, like the fear and the shock is related to the kidney. Fear and the shock are harmful to kidney. At our university, I really care about the growth and development of the children. I also go to kindergarten, primary school, and junior school, high school, and I observed that some children have retarded growth at teenager or adolescence. So we have the researchers working with the Education Bureau, and we found out that the children who have retarded growth are frequently beaten by their parents. And when the parents beat the children, there's no warning, and they just hit the children out of a sudden. And so the children are in the status of fear. So they grow up with the fear, and the fear is harmful for kidney, and the kidney is related to bone development. Whether your bone can grow, whether your bone is firm and hard enough is related to the health of your kidney. Their parents might have been very tall, but the children are very short. So there's also biological researches like in the US. In the west part of the US, there's tornadoes or the hurricanes, and there's one time the piglets got to the air from a farm, and the good news is that they land safely on the ground. Most of the piglets landed safely, but ever since then, the piglets never grow up. In other words, if the animals are in fear or shock, they will not grow up neither. So when we select food, we need to understand our personality. For example, if we are in shock very easily when you hear some noise, or if you have something happening, you feel very irritated, then the heart is not very good. So when you choose the food, you need to choose the food that can preserve your heart and your kidney. It's a systematic theory, and we have the good food fund. My understanding of good is that when you select the food, you select the right and good for you. It might be a good food for others, but not the right one for you. So you need to understand yourself when you select food. And next, I would like to talk about the animals, how Taoism approaches the animal protection. On this page, before I talk about the animals, I also want to talk about the 6 types of the food. There are grains and fruits and vegetables. There are also fungi. What is a fungi? And we know there's a very high incidence of the cerebral thrombosis and strokes, and is life-threatening. In Taoism, there's a fungi identified. And I don't remember the name of this fungi, but with it, it can reduce the cardiovascular event risk. And also the fermentation is very important. Fermentation is very healthy for the gut, for the stomach and the intestine. And the next, I want to present the Taoist approaches to animals, and it can be summarized as nature's law shall govern humans' way. It means that the animals shall grow in the environment suitable for them. So we need to protect the animals. We shall not have intervention against the animals. So if you want to free up the animals, you shall not have both the turtles and the fishes together. So it's very important to respect the nature's law. We shall follow the pattern in the nature. And for the animal protection, there is the narrow and broad definition of animal protection. I don't have enough time, so I only have a simple story to tell. The animal protection in narrow sense, according to Taoism, means the animals shall grow and live in their own way, and that's how we shall protect the animals and protect the environment they live in. So what is animal protection in the broad sense? There are a lot of things included in this broad animal protection. And the Taoism thinks that excessive desire will cause the worsening of people's moral and the ethics. And we need to have a harmonious connection between the humankind and the nature. And according to the commentary of I Ching, the heaven and earth gave rise to Tai Chi, which gave rise to yin and yang, and which gave rise to the 4 images, which give rise to the 8 trigrams, and which give rise to good and bad fortune, and which influences one's life. So it means that only within the nature's law we can pursue the good and avoid the bad fortune. So according to the Tao Te Ching, the deviation of a human's way from nature's law is the result of a self-alienation of humanity. If you're against the law of nature, if you have an intervention against the patterns of animals and the nature, then more is less. If you treat the relationship between human and nature is right, then less is more. So this is the animal protection in a broad sense. You need to protect your humanity. You need to preserve the right moral and the humanity. And then this is the foundation for animal protection. And before I end my presentation, I hope that you can get this message. All life is one, growing from the same roots. All are parts of nature. Fight negativity with kindness and be connected to all things. Thank you. This is my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Cheng, for your presentation. And the Taoism is the local Chinese culture and is deeply rooted in our everyday life. Sometimes we just didn't realize it. And our three speakers have talked about the different perspectives about food selection. And it's a very important opportunity for us to get too close to the Chinese culture and to get to the harmony between human, animals, and the nature. And these are deeply rooted in the thoughts of the Chinese people. I hope after listening to the speeches of our three speakers, we really can have our kindness from the bottom of our heart and use it for other aspects for animal protection. And next, we will proceed to the roundtable discussion. And today we have the honor to invite four panelists. We have the head of External Affairs, Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Mr. Paul Littlefair, and Mr. Zhou Yubing, the CIWF China Food Business Manager. And we have the Dr. Xiong Chuanwu, CEO at IQC, head of HFAC, American Animal Welfare Standards Organization in China, Mr. Chu Xueqing, Program Manager, China Farm Animals Project Wild Animal Protection. And in the roundtable discussion, we would like to focus on how to get consumers pay attention to animal welfare, reduce meat consumption, and buy animal welfare products from the market's perspective. In the last 3 to 4 decades, as the economy increased growth in China, the animal products consumption in China has been growing quickly. So we would like to have the opinions from our panelists. And first, we would like to invite Mr. Paul Littlefair, Head of External Affairs, Royal Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Please, Paul. Before Paul starts, please allow me to share with you that the UK is the leading country in terms of animal protection, and RSPCA has over 180 years history. Now, please, Paul.
谢谢 Melinda 主持人。
Thank you, Melinda. I have a limited time, so I will only give you a brief introduction to the practice in the UK, how to raise consumer awareness of animal welfare and encourage the purchase of higher welfare products. First, I guess some of you know of this, but I also want to remind you that the European residents attaches a higher and higher importance to farm animal welfare. This is a recent survey, and we try to find out the importance perceived by the citizens, and it increases year by year. And 94% of the residents think the welfare of farm animals is important, and they are willing to buy a high welfare products, and that they are willing to pay a premium for the products sourced from a higher welfare system. So this is the brief introduction.
And we believe, what do consumers consider as being important when they buy animal-based products? So what's on their radar, actually, especially nowadays? We discussed about the animal-based products in EU, in China, and in terms of the consumers, especially how the products are produced, and what's the current awareness level. It may vary from different places, but what we can agree is that in terms of the extent of the knowledge, extent of the awareness is getting higher and higher. And we know that in terms of how they are manufactured, keeping changing. Some recently, especially in China, there are some rapid development in the future, and we believe there would be even some new changes, something difficult to forecast. Our SPCA has been involved into this project for over 2 decades. This is about the SPCA Assured Scheme. And also recently, it covers one of the most important products, that's eggs, that's pork. So salmons, for example, are very important. They're of high welfare. And also for us, our original target is that we want to encourage the traditional enterprises, farmers, to raise their conditions for the sake of better animal welfare. And we have leveraged scientific standards. So when it comes to the transportation and the slaughter to follow the better rules, SPCA also have some difference compared to that of the rest. One of the biggest difference is the density of farming, animal farming. You can tell is that it's very clear. And we do have different standards. It is very detailed. It covers different animals with different requirements. So this is what you can see. This is the logo from different kind of products, and how the project is developed. Our perspective is to understand the customer's need. If they don't really know about the source, if they don't really know about how they are manufactured, and maybe there is no such a need, and they are not that aware. There is no way for them to really have impact on their behavior. So we want to really encourage and remind the customers that you have access to the product with animal welfare. but there are some do's and don'ts you need to pay attention to. And if they know about that, they can also remind those people who visit them frequently. And these kind of the products is still available. And also there are some retailers, and also there are some outlets, catering outlets. Hopefully they want to satisfy consumers' demand. And they are very willing to work out some solutions just to encourage the farmers and to join our projects. So from SPCA's perspective, and there are over like 3,000 the farms in China, in UK are covered. And if we can really increase, especially the chance or the numbers of these farms, I think more animals will get benefit from that. Just to follow these requirements. And how we encourage the market. And I think at the very beginning, consumers don't have a very high level of awareness yet. And still they don't understand what does high animal welfare mean, and what's the difference. And for some of those varieties are not very understood very well, especially the details for pig farming, compared to the conventional approach of farming, and what's the difference from that of the one with very high animal welfare. We find after 20 years, and also the consumers are more and more sensitive to these topics. And we just encourage consumers. We encourage also the animal farmers. If you cannot find these products, you can just simply ask, and whether it is available, and if not, and they will try to go to the others, especially to go to the retailers to ask them where it can be available. And then when you have these kind of opportunities, it can satisfy customers' need. We are still doing that, but we are doing it online. And we also hope that after introducing it from online, we also hope to promote it and to let consumers to find from those hospitals they are familiar with, to buy them, and to identify whether there is any appropriate products available, and any pork and the kitchen which have very high animal welfare. You can identify those supermarkets, which ones are ready for offering a product with high animal welfare. And also we have especially the stars and celebrities. They have many of their thoughts, and we let them to raise the awareness, the any possibilities of this. And also, as been shown here, for example, he shows from his events sessions. If you are going to make that recipe, you may select the pork with high animal welfare. And we do find that for most of us, do have such a trend, even we are at a different speed, but we are better and better and more aware about that. I want to know more about that. Especially, there are some explicit practice if you want to make some comparison and between the cage-free and the caged system. Now everyone is more and more aware about that, no matter it's about which the varieties. So it looks like cage-free is better. It has its benefits, especially compared to that of the caged one. And we now are well aware about
鸡蛋方面，进步比较快，这方面
consensus. So in the
有50%多，
of egg, we have made a big progress,
全国
and they are
等级都是在
over
我们 RSPCA 的
50% of the layers are following our standard of
那么当然
DA.
每个国家都有不同的系统，而且
It
在一个
really
国家里
varies from different countries and
疾病的
regions.
有高福利的，也有普通的，也可能
You
有一
can
些
run that with a very high animal welfare, or sometimes there are still some gap to be overcome.
同时有这样的话，那么选择是有的。
If this is available, you really have a chance of better choice. Just let them know and give them this opportunity. They can make very active selections. Of course, there are many considerations,
价格的
including some thoughts from the price perspective,
availability，
and also it's about availability,
城市能不能买得到，能不能找到的。
whether you can identify that or not.
关键是，如果消费者要选择高福利的话，
And also, if consumers are going to select the products with high animal welfare,
正确的
and we do need to have a very appropriate and a clear-cut a label or mark, food labeling really matters.
就消费者没有办法真正的去选。
Otherwise, consumers cannot select appropriately the products with very good animal welfare.
我们消费者，我们购买什么东西的时候，
As we are buying something,
这标签的后面到底是什么？
we want to learn what's behind the labeling.
不同的那些系统，
Yep.
有
As we are
但是
seeking the difference,
都会问一样的问题，
people asking similar questions. What is the meaning behind the label?
还是
Whether it is real,
还是
whether it's authentic, or whether it is a counterfeit.
这也是一个问题。
Another example,
然后还有这个，如果是真的的话，那么
if it is real,
后面的系统，这个
what are the system behind it? As you are especially checking, you are doing some auditing the criteria, or for example, organic one. What's behind that?
依靠这个
Whether we can leverage
依赖这个
such a label, whether we can, whether such a authenticity is very well
最后还有这个价格
justified.
如果
And also, again, it's about a price difference. What's the price gap? What's the difference with or without such a tag? We want to understand that,
值得的，
and whether it is worthwhile for that.
可以说一个大概的方向是，
So that is the basic overall trend
关心越来越
that consumer value it, especially in terms of how to treat it, how to treat these animal
关心中国，
with high animal welfare.
这个速度和跟物种也有关系的。
Yeah, this
物种可能
when it comes to some of the varieties, we haven't done enough work yet in terms of our thoughts.
还是比较落后，就是普遍的
We are lagging behind.
欧洲
It's not only China issue. It happens across the globe for fish, aquatic products, and
福利情况，
yeah,
可能这个科学还没有赶上。
and we still haven't catch up with that yet.
我们消费者，普通消费者和
What's more important is the manufacturers, farmer,
的关系，
consumers. That's what's the relationship That is the key. That is the most important part. If consumer and the manufacturers, the gap is so wild and they don't know about the manufacturing, that means there's no way for us to encourage them to really pay attention to a product of high animal welfare. We need to be motivated and rewarded for that. So when it comes to manufacturers, producers, and retailers, they need also to improve, especially the better system to secure the reliability of the food label. That really matters. And also, again, compared to the other products, it should be actually deemed as the same, including quality and also consumers' expectation for the reliability. Their attitude it remains the same, no matter. Also, when it comes to the auditing, tracking, everything else, as you are selling it, what are the source? What in terms of the source, whether I can buy in, believe on whether it is reliable.
And this is perfectly aligned with the Good Food Summit, and that's what we propose. That is, eat less, eat better. And we hope people can eat less animal products, but select better animal products with a higher animal welfare. Do not choose the very bad animal products that is produced against the nature and the need of the animals. So eat less and eat better. This movement is a very important one. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Mr. and Dr. Paul Littlefair, and thank you very much for sharing such rich information. And you have been working on the labeling work for almost like 30 years, and the percentage of the market share of this labeling is over 50%, and your work is very impressive, a very good achievement. And the Simply Ask is also very useful in China market, I believe. And in China, the labeling is also only at a very starting point, and it takes a longer time for the labeling standards. And before we have this, we shall do a very good education, and we hope that we can work with you to convey this message to more Chinese consumers. So thank you very much, Paul Littlefair. And next, we would like to invite the speaker from another UK-based organization, Mr. Zhou Yubing, and the CIWF China Food Business Manager. Welcome, Mr. Zhou.
您好，可以听到我的声音吗？
Can you hear me? Yes.
刚才我从我们协会开始做一个简短的介绍。
So please allow me to give a brief introduction to our association, and we are the world's leading farmed animals welfare association. We were established in 1967, and we are headquartered in the UK and in France, in US, in China. We have our offices, and we are dedicated to the sustainable development of agriculture, and our work in China focuses on food distribution, production, and education sector. And today I want to talk about how to promote consumer awareness of animal welfare. As we know that the promotion and implementation of animal welfare covers the production, retail, and the consumption. So at the production side, CIWF, starting from 2007, has established the Farmed Animals Welfare Award. and we focus on the excellent producers with a high animal welfare, and we have our criteria to review the cases, and we present the award, and we can also have the logo for the award winners. And as you can see on the screen, we have over 100 enterprises winning the awards. Some of the producers are very large, famous companies, and we also have medium and small sized enterprises who produce in a high welfare way. And we can see the passion and the perseverance of the Chinese enterprises. And in terms of the number of high welfare enterprises is still very small compared with the total number of the producers. So we believe in order to promote the animal welfare, we shall also focus on the consumption and retail process so that we get the demand from the consumer side and form a closed loop. I also want to talk about the label. The RSPC label is a very successful labeling system. And in France and in Netherlands, I've been staying there for work and life for several years. And please allow me to talk about the labeling in Netherlands and France. They have the animal welfare certification labels. In Netherlands is a Better Leven, and beyond that is the French label. And they are very common in the supermarket, and they are very successful because the European citizens have a very good awareness of animal welfare. And these two certification labels have translated the animal welfare into something easy to understand, like a Better Leven in Netherlands. In the local language means better life. And in the French label Beyond At means well-being, happiness. So the certification label shall quantify or visualize or convert animal welfare to something that the consumers can understand and can relate to. Better Leven and Beyond Enter actually have the different levels. And with a different level of animal welfare, you can get to different levels of premium price. And the consumers are willing to pay the premium for high welfare products. In China market, we have like cage-free eggs and the organic or the eco pork. Different from China, these EU labels have a more stringent certification. There's a third-party supervision, and there's also government management. So in the Netherlands, there's a supervision by both the government and the third party. This is to protect the consumers, and the consumers get more options. And this is also to guarantee the labels of cage-free or the eco or the high animal welfare are not just a lie from the producers, it's something real. And this is a 2025 cage-free commitment. And 2025 is an important timing. A lot of multinationals have made the cage-free procurement commitment. And the commitment starts from the cage-free eggs. But I believe as the time passes by, this will expand to all different types of animals. And this is what I really look forward to. And the animal welfare sector in China is a large blue ocean. And the enterprises who provide the high animal welfare, they cannot get a high price, and this is a dilemma for them. And in China, there's a very large, intensive farming factories. And we start to see and there's a lot of capital flow in the animal farming, and it's very industrialized, very intensive. They have a low cost, a high production volume, but this is not what we want to see from the perspective of animal welfare. The high welfare production do not have the cost advantage, so we have to consolidate the added value from the high welfare products. And we hope that the premium hotels, the catering service providers or restaurants, they are at the downstream, they are closer to the consumers. So we hope they can also promote the premium, so convert the value of animal welfare into price so that it can generate a profit and can support the work of the high animal welfare enterprises. And our association have a deep cooperation with these large enterprises. And we hope we can implement this cage-free commitment. And we hope we can connect the upstream with the downstream. And we hope we can do consumer education so that they understand the labels. And the benefits they get from the high animal welfare. So it's something real. So that's all I want to share with you today. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zhou, for your wonderful sharing. And you mentioned the premium of the animal welfare products. This is very important. This can encourage more enterprises to do the production with high animal welfare. Otherwise, they are not motivated. We cannot have the sustainable high quality product supply. And the China market, as Professor Fan has mentioned in the morning session, that we have enough quantity. Now we want to focus on quality. So we believe animal welfare will get more progress in the future in China market. And next, we would like to invite Dr. Xiong Chuanwu, the CEO at IQC Shanghai, and let's listen to him about promoting the cage-free eggs. Welcome, Dr. Xiong. Thank you, Melinda, for your invitation. It's my great honor to attend this roundtable discussion. My previous working experience is mainly at the retailers, so I know more about the consumers and the retailers as well as their attitudes for animal welfare. And our company started animal welfare business. Every year we organize the Animal Welfare Summit, and we mainly focus on cage-free eggs. And we worked with HFAC, and it's an NGO, and the American Animal Welfare Standards Organization and Certification Label Organization. So I want to talk about how to increase consumer awareness of animal welfare and increase market demand of high welfare animal products. Next page, please. Yes. In 2020, we have done a questionnaire. The goal of the questionnaire is to find out the awareness and the attitude of the cage-free eggs among the Chinese consumers. As a poll from the RSPCA has mentioned that over 94% of the people know of these high welfare products, and they are willing to pay for the premium. What about the Chinese consumers? In 2020, we are really wondering how the Chinese consumers, especially the urban consumers, think of the cage-free eggs. We have over 1,000 questionnaires, both online and offline. The offline are mainly at Carrefour, Walmart, RT Mart, Yonghui, and Hema. The online questionnaire is on the third-party platform.
对象，然后去做这个结果。下一页。
And the conclusion is on the next page. Here are some questions in our survey. Because time is limited, I cannot talk you through all the questions. I can only highlight a few of important ones. First, would you pay premium for the cage-free eggs? And how much more are you willing to pay for the cage-free eggs? 77.4% of the consumers say they are willing to pay the premium for the high animal welfare eggs, and like 50% of the consumers can accept of a premium less than 10%. 24.7% of the consumers can accept a premium of 10 to 20%. And previously, we say that why do we care about animal welfare? The Chinese people are not living a good life even. But now, as people are getting better education and getting higher income, we have more and more consumers care about animal welfare, and they are willing to buy these high animal welfare products.
And also, apart from understanding the dynamics and also their landscape of the consumers, and we also have carried out another survey across the catering and retail industry. 73 players have given us valid responses. They are already selling. That they use the eggs as their feedstock or raw materials. Yeah, we also work with CCFA to carry out our survey across the members. And basically, we have covered including MNC, local brands, joint ventures, or Wolfie brands, and local chain stores, and also their outlet size at least is 50, above 50. Even some of them have over 100 stores, outlets. So in terms of the size, the coverage are very wide. Next page. We carried out our survey on these players, and these are also their feedback, and especially from some of the results of the interviews. And 27% of the respondents have never heard of this. 31% said they heard of it but know nothing, and 34% said no to some extent, and also only 6.85% know a lot. What does cage-free mean? Yeah, we put together the concept like cage-free egg, organic egg, and also other concepts, putting that into the questionnaire. We know in the field of retail and catering, even from the large scale, the chain store, the awareness of the cage-free eggs are not very deep yet. Next page. We ask these respondents, they are from the chain store, franchise store. Yeah, what do you think are the biggest barriers to cage-free egg access? From consumer side, they are willing to buy, they are willing to pay. The product with better awareness. That's demand side. They are trading up. They want to have access to a better life. They have the willingness. Many consumers can accept. A quite big amount of consumers are willing to accept the premium. But from the supply side, it looks like there are many barriers, and they lack the awareness. So from the deep dive, in-depth interview on them about what's behind that, we can see and find that in China, we don't have a consistent standards or clear-cut standards and labeling on that. 2/3 said there is no standards or label of cage-free eggs yet. And also 64% pointed to very high costs, hefty costs. And nearly half of the patients pointed to a non-transparent supply chain. Supply chain is not transparent. At the end of the day, for consumers may not recognize it, especially the authenticity they lack the trust. Yeah, this is what we have learned from that and the feedback from them. Next page. And just the following post view and the following CIWF Dr. Zhou yeah, in EU and US and also in UK, for example, they have really great standard certification and a labeling system in place. But in China, is it necessary to promote the standards and the certification system in China? Okay, let's say 3/4 of the respondents said it is necessary, and 8.22% of the respondents said it is not a necessary small amount, and only 16% of the respondents said that they don't care. 8% said it's not necessary. So actually 3/4 justifies the importance. It is very even urgent to build the cage-free egg standards and certifications. Yes. Next page. And also, as we are sharing about the attitudes from the consumers, and also it is from the attitudes from the retail and the catering industry, and also it's about there are some barriers in the supply side, and what are the takeaway messages in China from China animal welfare promotion? The first, communication with consumers to help them know the benefits of animal welfare-backed products, especially the pros and the cons, the difference from animal welfare-backed products and the non-animal welfare-backed products. Number two, to build transparency and the trust of the supply chain. It's also about to boost the confidence and the trust of the consumers. Before, let's say they're skeptical. In China, many of the products in China, you can see they encounter some similar issue. For example, whether the organic food is really organic, authentically organic or not. As we are going to promote development of the animal welfare and we need to build the transparency and also the trust and the confidence. Last but not least is to build the standards, certification, and the labeling. And so far, it is another imperative task for us to cover. So I mentioned why I want to build the work together with HFAC. We want to make the certification available in China and to raise the awareness, reach out to our catering players, retailers. They may leverage the third party to build their confidence. And when we have such a certificate, consumers will have the trust, and also the retailers will gain the consumers' trust, and also they will have a better premium. And we are also connecting the sellers, the manufacturers, and the consumers as a very important information connection. So it is necessary to promote the labeling, the certificates on animal welfare. Thanks to the time limitation, today I'm just talk about this. Thank you, Dr. Xiong. I really admire your hard work on this topic. You also have given us a very in-depth and a careful observation, and you have shared with us about that. And I'd like to invite Ms. Chu Xueqing, Program Manager from WEP, World Animal Protection, to share from a WEP perspective, and especially how they are going to promote the philosophy and awareness about animal welfare. Thank you, Melinda. I really appreciate the Good Food Foundation to invite us for the Good Food Foundation. And I'm gonna also share with you from WAP's WEP perspective. and how to raise the public awareness towards the animal welfare. Next page. I think in the very beginning, Melinda has shared with us about animal welfare and the international awareness about that. I will talk very briefly. And you need to satisfy, especially the requirement also with the 5 FS, the 5 freedoms, the basic principles. I'm skipped details now.
我们每一个调研的样本量都是2000左右啊，然后也是以线上平台为主要的一个基础，基本上覆盖中国的大型的一个城市，北上广和有的会包括更多的一个线上的一个平台。那么刚才前面的几位也都分享了一些态度，那我在这边呢也跟大家列了一下我们3期调研的一些主要的一个结果吧。17年的调研的时候，我们当时看到就是我们的问卷里面包括了消费者对于这个福利养殖的一个态度。那么在那个时候，其实很多消费者是完全不能够理解什么叫福利养殖，所以我们为了让消费者能够更好的去选择他们支持什么样的一个养殖方法，我们甚至配上了图片，让消费者去知道说，哎，这个是福利养殖。那么对于这个消费者来说呢，我们也就着这样的一个最基本的一些问题，然后给消费者做了一些进一步的一些开放式的一个问题的一个梳理。那么大家可以看到，在最上面这个结果里面，我们写到了，其实在那个时候就有近一半多的消费者，他是采访者，他是愿意去购买动物福利的产品，甚至就是放弃他们原先觉得比较方便，甚至是比较便宜的一个场所，去到有着明确标识的这个福利产品的这个地方去购买产品。那还有一部分人是觉得，他有可能会接受这样的一个这个购买地址的一个变更的一个产品。那刚才这个前面几位专家也提到了，就关于溢价的一个问题，确实动物福利有可能会涉及到一部分的这个多的一个成本的一个投入。那么商家怎么去体现这一部分的价值？价格是很好的一个途径。那么我们也问到了这块的问题。那在2017年的时候，我们看到其实已经有比较多的这个受访者是愿意支付这个溢价的然后甚至有一些受访者愿意支付更高的一个溢价，包括就是超过10%的这样一个溢价。那这个是17年的一个结果。那么大家再看一下我这下面这个，我先跳过中间那个先看下面那个那个关于溢价这一块，我们19年的这个调研的话，就有更多的受访者愿意去支付这样的一个溢价有87%，相对于之前的41%，等于是翻了一番了。所以说这个整个的这个过程中，公众对于动物福利它是有着越来越多的一个接受然后对于这个价格问题，我相信有好的引导，会有越来越多的消费者去认同这样的理念，去支付这个额外的一个溢价。那么在18年的这个调研里面，我们也看到了，其实也有很大的一个增长，就关于消费者的这个购买地址的一个变更去到这个有这个提供高福利养殖承诺的这样一个商超去购买这个动物福利产品。所以我们看到整个在这样的一个过程中，消费者对于动物福利是接受的，而且是越得到他们的一个认同。好，下一页。那同时呢，我们除了在国内做了这样的一个调研，我们在18年的时候，我们总部办公室呢，在全球9个国家开展了对于消费者态度的一个调研。那这个里面可能会包括更多的一个内容。 不仅仅是高福利养殖，甚至会提到就是由于这个低福利的养殖导致的这个滥用抗生素的问题。那在这个里面呢，这个我们的这个问卷也是有比较好的一个反馈，就是近70%的这个受访人认为这种特别高密度的这种工业化的养殖是非常容易让动物的受到伤害的。那么对于这个美国的消费者认为，就是商超就应该从这种高福利养殖的这个养殖场去采购猪肉。那么我们中国呢，当时也有一些中国的这个采访者也是说愿意去这些有高福利养殖承诺的这个商超去购买产品。那在其他的国家呢，有绝大多数的这个受访者，他们更担心的是这个抗生素的这个问题。那么就着这样的一个调研的一个结果，我们也特别重视对于公众和消费者的这样一个宣传和倡导工作。所以下一页，世界动物保护协会呢，对于公众和消费者这边，我们也开展各种宣传和倡导工作。比较有代表性的是，我们2018年在北京的这个来福士商场，我们做了一期这个互动墙的这样一个宣传活动。因为就像刚才Melinda 提到了，虽然我们每一天都接触到动物源性产品，但是其实公众对于农场动物的了解是最少的，大家根本不知道这个现在的农场动物是怎么样养殖的。那么我们为了让更多的消费者能够了解到他吃的动物源性产品是怎么来的，我们开展了这样的一期活动。我们通过这个互动墙，把低福利养殖的这个现状和比较好的高福利养殖的这个情况放在一起，那么做一个对比，让更多的消费者能够意识到原来现在是什么状况，它可以达到什么样的一个状况。那这样的一个展示，让消费者更多的去理解到这样的一个现状，那同时呢，能够支持我们的一个活动。那么18年的时候，我们在北京的这个活动大概收到了近16000个线下的公众的一个支持。所以19年的时候，我们在上海的环球港也开展了一个类似的一个互动墙的一个活动。那么这个活动呢，我们也是做了一个类似的活动去宣传动物福利，包括就是让更多的这个消费者能够参与进来，去表达他们的想法，去更好的去支持这个那个福利养殖。那这样的一个活动呢，我们19年的时候大概得到了近18000人的一个线下的一个支持。他们愿意去做这样的一个声明，去支持高福利的一个养殖。那同期呢，我们还在北京和其他城市做了这样一个地铁广告。我今天还收到我们同事的一个图片，就是在那个北京的那个菜市口，依然还有我们的这个福利养殖的这样一个宣传。我们希望通过这样的一个宣传，让更多的人能够意识到，其实福利养殖是跟我们息息相关的。它会让动物更健康，但同时呢，它也会让我们的食物更健康。好，下一页。那世界动物保护协会呢，从今年开始，我们开始倾向于去推动食物系统的一个转型工作，因为我们认为，你仅仅去 focus 就专注在一些问题上，很难去改变一个变革性的一个系统性的一个变革。所以我们希望通过用一个更大的一个话题，跟我们粮食基金这边合作做这个食物系统方面的一个宣传工作。我们认为农场动物的福利，它其实是和我们人类息息相关的。之前我们觉得在这个疫情之前，大家可能会认同说农场动物的福利跟食品安全息息相关。那经过这个整个这个疫情的这个影响，我相信有越来越多的人会认同这个观念，会把统一健康作为一个重要的一个理念在将来的这个工作中进行宣传。因为动物福利农场动物的福利，它不仅仅会影响到环境，它还会导致资源方面的问题，它还会关系到人类的这样一个健康。所以我们希望这些问题都能够通过我们提升农场动物的福利去解决。那刚才呢李博先生也提到了说我们希望这个公众不要去过度的去消耗动物源性的食品， 不要去一味的去购买价格比较低的一些动物源性的食品。同样，我们在这个地方也是这样理解，因为你去一味的追逐低利润、低价格的这样一个动物源性的食品，那么就造成了商家对于这个成本的一个压缩。那成本压缩的很大一部分来源是对于动物福利的一个降低，对于动物关照的一个降低。所以我们希望就是现在的消费者能够更合理的去消费这个动物源性的食品，去合理的膳食，少肉多素，让这个农场动物能够有很好的一个这个生活的一个空间，然后让企业能够更多的去注重品质把动物源性的食品的这个品质能够提升把他们的这个基本的需求能够改善这个是我这边简单的分享的一点，谢谢大家。
非常感谢楚经理的这个介绍哈。那么这个世界动物保护协会在这方面做了非常多的工作，而且刚才您分享的这些这个数据哈，调查的这个数据，我觉得还是挺鼓舞人心的。看来过去几年大家共同的努力呢，在市场上，在这个消费端呢，可能还是对消费者的意识提升呢，有了一个很大的一个推动。那么也希望我们未来呢，能够大家一起共同努力，那让更多的消费者意识到这个动物福利的问题，意识到这个就是动物的福利呢，实际上是跟人的健康呢，有紧密相关的。那么今天时间有限呢，因为本来还是要想做一个讨论，但是呢，最后这个时间我们已经超了。那现在呢，我就简单的问最后一个问题，大家可能用1、2句话来讲一下，请各位嘉宾讲一下，就是是不是能够介绍一下，就是在未来的1、2年内，在推动消费者认知动物福利和购买高动物福利产品方向，那么贵机构呢有没有什么样的一个计划和行动要去采取？那我们还是从吕博先生开始。
谢谢Melinda，能听到吗？
可以的。
对，我想刚才我们这个小组3位专家都提到了，跟我也说的很准，我觉得一个方面最重要的一个原则是这个问题是很复杂的，关键是消费者如果不了解或者没有需求的话，那就没有办法刺激这个系统的发展和进步，所以消费者是关键，但是同时也不能忽略其他的方面。当然，这个生产方面的成本，刚才熊博士也提到了，好像我们都提到了这个方面，有成本，所以这个成本一定要让生产方面的让他们收回，让他们补充，让他们有好处，有利润吧。如果没有这个经济方面的那个机会，经济方面的利润的机会的话，那就根本没有意思。It's very important 所以同时在里面也有这个零售商方面的，零售商就是把我们消费者和生产方面连起来的，所以这个 chain 这个链是很重要的。而且刚才熊博也提到了这个，目前在中国也不透明，在英国以前也是这样，不够透明的，所以这个透明度应该是在未来是非常重要的。在英国我们目前观察一下，有一些物种可能在这个市场方面高福利的产品还是比较低，不是很大，所以不像那个鸡蛋或者猪肉之类的。目前在英国20%多到30%左右的生猪都是在 RSPCA 的高福利那个标准生产的，所以这算比较成功的，因为数量不少吧。但是有其他的物种，我们可能需要多关注，所以在未来我们要看一下其他的产品、其他的物种，如何提高对这方面的高福利。谢谢。
谢谢李博的分享。那个下面那就请 CWF 的周 周玉斌先生来讲一下。
哎，好的，听得清哈。
可以的。
是，我们作为CIWF 呢，首先呢，我们还是要坚持，就是包括通过我们的网站呀、公众号啊，然后继续推动这个动物福利的相关知识，然后给大家消费者做一个常规的普及。第二呢，就是一定会坚持的去继续推行我们在中国引进已经很多年的这个动物福利养殖金奖，那么去更多的、更好的去鼓励中国当地的这个福利养殖企业，然后呢给他们赋能，让他们更多的能接触采购企业。其次呢，也是我们从今年开始做的，就是要把我们曾经在世界范围内颁的就是给世界跨国企业颁的那些全球性的金奖，也包括就是动物福利金蛋奖、金鸡奖、金猪奖。逐步的呢引进中国，把这些奖项呢对中国的本土的像食品商超啊，还有什么酒店呐这些的企业终端企业去开放，然后让他们从终端零售端去更好的采购福利产品，从而带动整个这个福利生产链条的加速运转。第三个呢，那就是像粮食系统啊这样的机构合作，那么要把动物福利呢扩展和提高到一个持续生态发展，还有一些这个可持续农业的这么一个高度，然后去帮动物福利呢进行一个可以说是升华或者提升。那最后呢，也是我们总部最常做的，也是我们的常规业务，那就是呢同这些大型的外国的跨国企业，就是也可以说是监督督促或者说帮助他们在动物福利水平上，从整个集团的 level 去提高自己，那由他们来带动整个下游生产端的这个产能和需求，来提高这个动物福利最终的这么一个效果。
好，谢谢。要做的工作很多哈。那么下面有请熊博。
好的，这个就从我这边的角度吧，现在正在做的关于非笼养鸡蛋的，我们做的一些这个工作，包括我们接下来想做的一个工作。其实刚才其实提到的，就是说我们一个就是成本的问题啊，如何生产出高福利这种又有市场竞争力的一个产品。所以这2年的话，我们也跟 FAI 这边有很多的一些联络和联系，帮助我们国内的一些福利生产企业能够降低成本，能够提高他们的一个生产的一个效率，包括利用这个欧美发达国家的一个成功，比如说像英国的一些这个成功的一个生产经验，这是第一个。第二个就是说，当产品出来以后，我们需要有市场的终端能够帮他去销售。那这个过程当中，其实产和销是需要对接的。虽然说我们讲非笼养鸡蛋有很多大的企业做了承诺，但其实他们一直还是停留在过去的一段时间里面的一个认知。他们觉得目前来说，中国的这个非笼养的生产企业的这个能力没有准备好，规模没有达到他们想要的一个规模，所以这个也是我们接下来可能正在想做的一个事情。产销对接，把有购买福利产品的一些大的一些商超、餐饮连锁企业，包括一些有意愿在生产或者是已经在生产的一些这个养殖企业，然后跟他们经常组织起来在一起对话，让相互了解需求和采购端的一些变化，包括一些成本的变化、规模的一些变化，这个可能更好促进我们的这个整个行业的发展。那第三个呢，就是说我们刚才我也提到的这个消费者信心，包括我们讲的这个整个行业的一个标准的问题。那其实我们现在今年也在除了和美国的这个 HFAC 合作引入这个标准，目前来说大概已经完成了3家的这个非笼养的鸡蛋的认证。那计划到年底的话，应该会有5家的这个非笼养鸡蛋的认证。那同时这个标准呢，也是被这个盛隆我们大的一个肉鸡企业去采用。所以未来的话，就是说这种标准的这个引用，包括这个帮助行业规范化的去生产福利的产品，那这样的话让买家更有信心去推广这样的产品。 只有因为对于促进消费的话，一个是消费者的一个认知，能够拉动这个整个的采购的一个需求。那么另外一个就是对于采购，对于我们的销售渠道，包括我们讲的一些电商，我们一些这个国际的跨国品牌，如果他们对这个产品有信心的话，他们会愿意去推广这个产品，他们会去宣传这个产品的一个差异化。因为现在的话，我们的很多的食品，包括一些大的这个零售餐饮企业，竞争还是比较激烈的。我相信未来的话，动物福利的产品将是会成为未来食品竞争的一个差异化的一个竞争点。那如果我们真的把这些产品从成本上面，从这种销售的这个信息对称方面，包括我们的这个信任信心方面，如果做好了，我相信随着这个消费者的这个他们的一个成长和对于动物福利的一个认可，那同时的话，我们整个产业链的一个更健康的去发展动物福利的产品，我相信会很快去推动我们在中国动物福利的产品的一个健康发展。好吧，我就讲这么多。
好，谢谢。那个，我觉得徐博你们一直都在把在做这个动物福利产品市场化的这样的一个推进的一个工作哈，我觉得非常值得期待。就是中国出现这个有标签的动物福利产品。好，谢谢。那么最后有请楚学勤经理来介绍一下。
好的，谢谢。那世界动物保护协会呢，对于这个提高动物福利呢，一直是我们坚持的一个主要的一个工作的一个方向。所以接下来我们会继续跟我们不同的这个合作伙伴来工作。消费者这一块是肯定是我们最重要的一个部分。那么我们也会通过各种各样的活动，能够让更多的消费者能够支持动物福利。然后的话呢，也会跟大家去宣传这个福利产品。同样，我们还希望就是把消费者这一块呢，我们就像李博刚才提到的啊，我们还是要推这个让消费者去合理的膳食。然后的话呢，不仅仅是从健康的角度，个人的健康、人类的健康、动物的健康、环境的健康去考虑，去保护我们整个星球，然后把动物福利作为其中的一个很重要的一个部分去推这一块。那同样的，我们还会保持跟这个养殖企业的一个沟通。世界动物保护协会呢，联合其他几家机构，我们共同推了一个叫农场动物福利标准。那么我们希望呢，有越来越多的企业能够加入到这个标准，以这个标准为生产的一个主要的一个指导。把动物福利呢作为他们工作的生产的一个主要的一个理念来实现，这也是我们的一个好的一个愿景吧。那同样呢，我们也希望这个能够推动一些食品的制造商和零售商，从他们的供应链的角度去规范标准，然后去采购高福利养殖的这样一个产品。这个是我们目前计划做的一些工作。简单跟大家分享一下，谢谢。
好，谢谢。非常高兴有听到，就是说你们要做这个动物福利的标准哈，我觉得这个是非常重要。那么如果这些生产企业能够把动物福利的标准最后纳入到他们的这个生产当中去，我觉得那么我们市场上可能就会有更多的高动物福利产品的这样的一个出现。非常感谢。那么最后呢，我也想介绍一下，就是粮食基金在这方面有可能去做的一些项目。那实际上动物福利呢，作为粮食基金的粮食倡议的第2条呢，是我们会大力推进的一个方向。那么尤其呢，粮食基金呢，在这个动物福利方向呢，更主要的一个定位呢，是在推动消费者的教育，那么推动消费者能够更多的来去理解动物福利的这个理念，来去购买动物福利的产品。那么所以呢，未来呢，我们会通过更多的这样的一些教育项目和宣传项目，也就是说我们会通过一些平台和视频的这样的一个节目的这样的一个制作，让消费者了解食品，了解食物生产和消费它背后的这样的一个一些信息。那么就可以让他们知道我为什么要少吃肉和吃好肉。那么同时呢，我们的所有的项目，包括我们的厨师团餐项目，还有我们的青年项目妈妈厨房， 菜市场改造，我们都会把这个动物福利的理念纳入进去。那我们明年也会去做团餐的项目，那希望在这个团餐的这个推动当中呢，能够推动更高动物福利的肉，所以也希望各个机构呢，在这方面有信息和这个无论是宣传方面的信息和生产方面的信息呢，我们都希望未来呢跟大家能够有一个长期的一个合作。那好，那我们今天的这个论坛呢，讨论的就到这儿。那非常感谢今天呢参加这个论坛的所有的嘉宾。那我们今天的这个论坛中，一开始呢，我们其实有谈到，我们为什么要去关注动物福利这样的一个概念。虽然动物福利这个词呢翻译是从国外翻译过来的，但是在今天下午3位教授的这个解说当中呢，实际上我们也能够看到，那么动物保护的这种理念在中国的传统文化中呢，实际上不仅有系统、有深刻的理论，而且呢还有具体的实践。那么在后面4位嘉宾的这个深入探讨的过程当中呢，我们其实也能够感到，中国在动物福利的这个市场推动方面呢，其实已经有了一点点的一个进展，而且呢，未来呢，如果大家同心合力的话呢，这方面呢，我们可能会有一个更好的一个进展。那么2019年爆发的这个疫情呢，实际上给我们呢可能都敲响了一个警钟，也就是说，我们每个人的饮食的这样一个选择呢，实际上不是我们每个人自己的事情，那么最终它有可能关注到我们所有的，就是包括动物的健康和公共的健康。那所以希望呢，今天的我们的这个论坛呢，是未来我们合作和大家这个共同来做一个有健康的可持续发展饮食选择的一个开始。那好吧，那今天的论坛就到这儿结束，那我们明年再见。谢谢大家，谢谢各位嘉宾。那在我们结束之前呢，我们就是大家把这个我们的视频打开，我们一起照一张相，好不好？请各位老师、各位参加会议的嘉宾们。好，是谁在照相 ？Nick 吗？还有就是跟大家报告一下，今天其实我们都超过了半个小时哈。我们到今天下午为止呢，整个论坛的这个直播呢，有超过5万人的观众来观看。所以呢，可能大家对食物的议题、对动物福利的议题还是很关注的。那好，是Nick在照吗？
对，已经照好了。
啊，已经照好了，我在说话，我们要不要再照一次？好，1、2、3。好，谢谢各位嘉宾。
不好意思，最后还要让那个观众填一下反馈表。
我们的这个反馈表。
反馈表。
好，非常感谢大家的参与。大家扫一下2维码，完了填一下今天下午的这个论坛的一个反馈。好，谢谢大家，明年再见。